This is perhaps the greatest week in the history of biblical history. This is the week that the Messiah rose from the dead and forever freed us from sin and death. Now that's amazing enough, but what about the story behind the story? What if I could tell you amazing things you didn't know about the resurrection? Things that correlated so closely with what was going on in the temple at that very moment, you get shivers down your spine. Well, bundle up, my friend. You're about to get some shivers like you've never had before. Shivers you can only experience at the end of the sixth day, after the sun is set, on Shabbat Night Live!
It's Shabbat Night Live from Charlotte, North Carolina, with your host, Michael Rood. Join Michael's guest hosts, Scott Laird and Matthew Hall. Now, here he is, the Director of the Chronological Gospels International Relations, Scott Laird.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood, the livingest, liveliest Shabbat this side of the sunset. Speaking of lively, he's a quiet soul, but inside he's roaring like the Lion of Judah. He is a Rood Awakenings ministry coordinator, the leader of Aviv Worship, this band right here, and the messianic minstrel behind MatthewHallMusic.com. Please give a living, lively welcome to Matthew Hall.
Shabbat Shalom.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Well, we are about to talk about something that puts every zombie story to shame.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right.
Yes, we're going to talk about zombies on Shabbat Night
All
Live.
right. That's good.
It is the true spine-tingling account of the resurrection of the dead. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine how freaked out people would be who saw this phenomenon right after Yeshua rose from the dead? You know, that would be just amazing.
It's definitely one of those events where, when we watch movies, we're disconnected because it's happening to somebody else, and it's just our mind says, "Oh, that's not real."
Right.
But then, if something like that was to happen in real life, I think our
But
it's paradigm would shift.
Right, and it's the good news though after the horrible events of the crucifixion,
right,
which also has been portrayed on screen. And you said that your family recently watched that with the Son of God movie.
Well, we had been wanting to watch the Son of God movie for quite a while, and so we pulled it up on Netflix, and we got the family together, and we sat down, and we had a nice family movie. And my experience, I remember watching The Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson had done, mm-hmm. and it impacted me. I mean, it was just intense. It was raw. It was dirty. It was real life.
Yeah. And
we thought this might be a little tamer, for the kids. And so we're sitting on our couch, and Maggie, who's our youngest, she's mm-hmm. She's 3.
Okay.
So I'm sitting next to her. Actually, she's sitting right on my lap right here. And we're getting to the part in the movie where Yeshua is about to be, crucified.
Right.
So he's going through the different stages of, being...
like beaten and whipped.
Yeah, beaten, whipped, the stakes going into his hands and all that stuff. And she starts bawling her head off. I mean, her head's back, her eyes are closed, there's tears streaming down her face, and she's just, what? She's just, And I'm looking at her, my wife's looking at her, and we're thinking to ourselves, this is cruel, how can we do this to her? But then we began to see a couple of the boys were crying and tears were coming down their face. They were having an encounter with the reality of what really took place.
Right. So did you hesitate going, gee, maybe we should turn this off? Or
for a couple minutes, I felt so bad.
Right.
But we kept telling her over and over, we said, it's going to be okay. It's going to turn out. It's going to work out in the end, and encouraging her, and she just didn't get it. Well, then when Yeshua rose and appeared to the disciples and showed himself the holes in his hands, and her whole demeanor changed. The boys were shouting, and she was excited. He's alive, So the reality of the whole event, even though it was in a movie format, that really happened. When you watch a movie that say it's based on a true story,
right,
you view the movie differently than when it's a fiction or nonfiction. I can't ever remember which one is which. Yeah. But it really impacted the family, and it was great. And the kids a couple days afterwards couldn't stop talking about it.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, Passover is a big deal. Don't get us wrong with
Right.
that. And if you joined us for Passover at the Embassy Suites, that was, just last weekend. That wasn't long ago at all. We want to thank you very much for coming. And it was indeed the best of the best, just like we said it was going to be. It was amazing.
Right.
Lots of positive comments. It was a ton of fun. And hey, speaking of fun, before we talk about the Feast of First Fruits, if you have signed up for the Israel tour, or if you have not, rather, it's coming quickly, April 19th. That's just a week or so away. So if you have any questions about the tour, be sure to visit our website at roodawakening.tv/Israel2015. And there you will see an email address for the tour coordinator. Her name is Florence. And Florence can help you figure out any of the last minute details that you need to know for going on the tour. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I think we should show some pictures of the tour here on Shabbat Night Live when it's all said and done. I, for one, would love to see some pictures of the tour.
Me
because
too. I love it every year. I mean, we've been watching the tour, pictures and stuff like that from a distance. We're still waiting for our turn. Bethany and I are.
Yeah, I've never been to Israel either.
We're anxious. We actually, we're having trips back and forth to Israel. The production crew, for the TCG that's
for the
coming
Chronological
out.
Gospel series.
So
yes.
I'm a little bit jealous. Thought about hiding in one of their suitcases or something.
Yeah, I thought about learning how to run a camera really quick too, so maybe I could do that too. But anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. Whether you are in Israel, here in the USA, Canada, or points across the globe, you may or may not know that Michael Rood's teachings are now available to you no matter where you live, because we broadcast the true gospel of the kingdom all over the world. Michael Rood's most famous teachings, which are ones like this, the Red Sea crossing, the real Mt Sinai, Truth and Tradition, The Road to Emmaus, The Name, all those famous teachings are now on TBN every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. And TBN, of course, is all over the world. And very soon, the Chronological Gospels television series will be starting. And so look forward to that. You can see all these same teachings on our website, our roodawakening.tv, also all of our Shabbat Night Live episodes. INSP in the UK shows Shabbat Night Live and all of the Rood Awakening from Israel series as well. Omega Television, which is in Iceland, and Gospel TV in Europe, they are now showing a new show with Michael called Journey to the Center of the Word. So that's a special thing for our friends in Iceland and all over Europe. We're also broadcasting Michael's teachings on Enlace, the Spanish-speaking network. We're also on YouTube, iTunes, Google TV, and Roku. Now, if you're watching Shabbat Night Live on Google TV or Roku, that is on demand only, but you can still watch us there. Now, if the concept of the Chronological Gospels television show sounds familiar, well, you might be thinking of our executive producer opportunity that we've been talking about. We've been talking about for a while now. And this is the new show that this executive producer program was developed for. We need folks to step in and help with the production costs by becoming an executive producer of one episode. For being an executive producer of one episode, you get your name as the executive producer on the episode. You get 10 copies of the Chronological Gospels to pass around to your friends. You also get an executive producer trophy to put on your desk, kind of like an Academy Award type looking thing. And a nice tax receipt for the 2015 tax year. Now, you can find out all about it at thechronologicalgospels.com. All you have to do is look for the executive producer banner on that homepage. Now, as promised, we are going to share the greatest Ghostbuster story of all time today. It happened during this week in history, according to the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. Take it out if you have it. We are on the third Shabbat of the month of Nisan, right there. And now last week was Passover, and the lunar eclipse that everyone was talking about, the blood moons, as so they were called.
Right, yep.
Anyway, it's not a blood moon. It was misnamed. Misnomer, that's what I'm trying to say. As mentioned in the book of Joel. It is a lunar eclipse. And Michael's said that several times, several months ago when all the hype started. Now it is indeed significant because Yehovah is communicating a message to us through the stars and through the celestial bodies that he orchestrates. But again, this is not the event referred to in the book of Joel. So now that we have that all out of the way, let's continue on. This, of course, was the week after Passover. Halfway through that week, after Yeshua had been in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights.
Are you sure about that now?
Well, yes. He was crucified on a Wednesday, not on a Friday, raised on a
Right.
Sunday, because that just don't work.
So we got that sorted out then.
We have that sorted
Okay,
out. Yeah, we
good.
have the technology now to figure that out. He was resurrected on the 17th of Nisan. 14th was Passover, 15th, 16th, 17th. Oh, look at that. 3 days and 3 nights. Amazing how that works, isn't it? Now, this year, that was on a Tuesday, according to our calendar. But when Yeshua was resurrected, it was a Shabbat, which makes a lot of sense when you consider that he referred to himself as the Lord of the Sabbath. Foreshadowing of what would happen. So that's very interesting. Now, when we read the story of the resurrection, it's spectacular enough, but wait till you hear what was going on that we're going to tell you tonight. When you hear what was going on in the temple at that time, it will blow your mind. If you have the chronological Gospels, let's turn to page 261. This is the event number 227, when the first fruits were harvested by Yeshua, the first fruits being the first fruits of the dead.
Right.
Who is now, Yeshua is now the everlasting high priest. The first fruits in this case are, like I just said, not sheaves of barley, but the saints who had died and were resurrected. Now, we're seeing, this happen, like you said, on a movie screen, like a zombie movie or something, which
Right.
we don't watch, but anyway, I can imagine that's what it'd be like.
No zombie movies in our home.
No, so, I mean, that would be pretty scary to see. I mean, you're seeing Uncle Henry, who died years ago, and he is suddenly alive and well,
Right.
standing in your living room.
We exaggerated probably our Hollywood version in our mind,
Yeah.
of what that might have been like, but I'm sure it was probably different.
Well, they're not going to be walking around like this, like looking all gray and everything. I mean,
Right.
they're going to look resurrected. They have the resurrected body, so you can
Right.
imagine what that's
It's going
like.
to be glorious. I mean,
Yeah.
it won't be a dreary, what's that new movie that came out with the vampires, and they have like gray skin and
Oh, yeah.
all the girls are into it,
Don't care to know, but I know what you're talking about, yeah. So anyway, that would be crazy enough, seeing, somebody you knew
Yeah.
previously who had died, and all of a sudden they're there. But check out what's happening in the temple at this time. First of all, we're looking at, like we said, event number 227. It's Matthew 27, verses 52 and 53, which says simply, after his resurrection, the bodies of many saints who slept arose and came out of the graves and went into the holy city and appeared to many. Now, here's the important thing. Here's the note that Michael puts underneath that event. The resurrection of these saints is part of the fulfillment of the prophetic shadow pictures embedded in Yom HaBakkurim, the day of first fruits. After the Passover lambs were put into the oven, the Kohen Gadol, that is the high priest, and his entourage went over to the Kidron Valley bridge to the barley field on the side of the Mount of Olives, opposite the Temple Mount. They bound together 10 standing sheaves of barley, 1 omer each, and returned to the temple. There, the high priest remained in seclusion until the first fruits were harvested, processed, and presented in the temple the following morning. The harvest of the first fruits was done in the failing light after sunset at the end of the weekly Sabbath. Now, keep these things in mind. That was during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is when the saints in the graves arose in the sight of thousands who were participating in the harvest of the Bikurim. The barley was parched, ground, and baked during the night to prepare it for the first fruits offering in the morning. The high priest was in seclusion in the Temple Mount until after the first fruits were presented. Likewise, Yeshua allowed no one to touch him until after the first fruits of the saints were presented before the throne in heaven by him personally as the eternal high priest, the Kohen Gadol. So there you go. That is the correlation. Now you think, oh, that makes a lot more sense. No wonder they couldn't touch him, because he was trying to follow this protocol
Sure.
of the high priest and the Feast of First Fruits.
Yeah.
It's interesting how...
Well, you don't put those two together.
Well, yeah, because normally, in Gentile Christian church, we don't learn about this stuff. We don't know the procedures that happened.
Right.
And it's interesting to see how
Yep.
when God orchestrates it for, well, this is how you are to do it. Just don't ask any questions, high priest. Just do it this way.
Well, and
He has a greater...
the writers, they're writing this thing. They know all these correlations. They know why. And
Right.
Like, I can't remember who it was that said, if we put everything into, it'd just be pages and pages and pages to explain all of the context and all of the cultural.
Right.
So you have to go to outside sources to figure that out because we're not living in that time.
That's right. That's right. Now, once you have the story behind the story, there's a lot more logic and purpose, like we said, behind what Yeshua did. But in our Gentile upbringing, rarely do we ever hear about the traditional stuff that was going on in the Hebrew temple, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to us.
Right.
That is exactly why our mantra here at A Rood Awakening is to restore the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith. That's why we do it. We just learned in church all of our lives that, he is, we had learned who he is in church, but then we learned so much more.
Right.
He still rose from the dead. We still believe that, but once you understand the backstory, it means so much more. For me, and I'm assuming you as well, it helps put away any doubt whatsoever because there's a clear purpose behind the series of events. It just makes a lot more sense. Even if you just believe for the sake of faith beforehand, now you have the facts to back it up. So this is why we are here, to help you understand why you believe what you believe, so that you can be a more effective witness to others. But the only way to do that is with your support. You see, we don't have any sponsors for Shabbat Night Live. There's no government funding. There's not even a congregation. You are the sponsors. You are the source of funding. You are our congregation. This show, Shabbat Night Live, and all of Michael Rood's teachings exist for the sole purpose of restoring the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith. If you have gained anything from this program, support what Michael Rood is doing, so that others can have the lights turned on to their faith just like you did. Others have given so that you could see these programs. Now it's your turn. Freely give as you have freely received. That makes you part of what we are doing here, which means you receive the same blessings we do for bringing the true gospel of the kingdom to the ends of the earth. And please don't think that you can't make a difference because you can only afford a few dollars. You know what? Yehovah can do wonders with any amount. In a moment, you'll see contact information on the screen you need to make a donation tonight. And for that, thank you. Could you explain more about, more about Messianic Judaism? I think some of your audience may lump all Hebrew roots in that category, but I've heard you say that this is not the case. What exactly is the difference between commandment-keeping Hebrew roots fellowships versus Messianic Judaism?
Okay. Messianic Judaism is really kind of an identity cult. It's people that are Jewish, that they want to maintain their identity as far as being Jewish. And so what they do is, instead of really doing what Yeshua said to do, they take on the trappings of Phariseeism, but just for show. You know, they'll have a big conference, and they'll wear their kippas and they'll wear their prayer shawls. But then afterward, they'll take the kippah off and they'll eat a ham sandwich, you know, right after the conference is over. And I know these people. I know that's what they do, okay? And so the Orthodox really don't like them because they know that they're playing a game. They're trying to make people think that they're really part of Judaism, but Judaism is ancient Phariseeism. This is what Yeshua said, and it's all of their doctrine is based on fraud. And it's a fraud that's promulgated in the King James Version of the Bible. I'll tell you what it is. Matthew 23. Yeshua said to his disciples, this is, just 2 days before his crucifixion, and the multitude, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. King James says, whatsoever they command you to do and observe, that do and observe, but don't do after their works, because they say and do not. Okay, that's what the English says from the Greek, from the Aramaic. But that's not what the Hebrew Matthew says, which you would think that Jews would go with the Hebrew Matthew. The Hebrew Matthew says, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatsoever Moses says, do, but do not follow the takanot and the maasim of the Pharisees, because they say they follow Moses, but they don't do what Moses says to do. Takanot are the laws enacted by the Pharisees which change or negate biblical law. They've added thousands of commandments. They've taken away 100 commandments. They have made up their own religious system that is loosely based on the Bible, but basically it is based on rules and regulations that they themselves have invented. It's just like Catholicism. It is just like the Mormon Church. It's just like the Baptist, Presbyterian, Episcopalian. It is like people take a few verses that they like, and then they start adding things and making their own rules and regulations, and that's why you can pick from like 37,000 different denominations of the rules and regulations that you like, that you can live with, okay? And then you join that church and you think you're going to get, just a free ride into heaven because you are following this organization's rules and regulations. Well, Yeshua exposed Phariseeism as a fraud. He deliberately and vehemently broke the laws, the man-made rules of Phariseeism, and he said, keep the Torah. Do what Moses says to do. That is the commandment. No one adds to it. No one subtracts from it. That was Yeshua's stand. Phariseeism is a fraud, just like every Christian denomination that adds or subtracts commandments. That's how you know you've got a fraud, ladies and gentlemen. And if people want to have, their own brand of what they call Messianic Judaism, it's nonsense. Judaism is ancient Phariseeism. Yeshua said, don't do it. But they told Messianic Judaism, how can there be a Messianic version of what Yeshua said, don't do? It's an oxymoron. It is pure idiocy. But yet it makes these people feel still Jewish. And these people have actually gone to the Pope because they want the Pope to recognize them as a legitimate form of Judaism. I'll tell you, if I ever go to the Pope and ask him to recognize me, put a bullet in my head before I get to the Vatican. Put me out of my sick, twisted mind. I'm not going to ask the Pope to legitimize me. It's like asking him to legitimize Yeshua's real teaching. Ain't going to happen, people. So, follow the Torah the way Yeshua taught it, the way Yeshua lived it. He said, follow me. That means you put your feet in the footsteps of him. That's what it means to follow him. Do what he did. That's what follow me means. None of this nonsense of making up your own rules and regulations. That's why I said most who come to me on the day of judgment will be told, take a hike. I never knew you.
All right, great questions. Thank you for sending those in. Keep putting those questions on Facebook. We'll do more in a future episode of Shabbat Night Live. And in just a minute, we'll be joining Michael in the tent of Abraham for the Kiddush and go right into tonight's half-hour teaching with Michael Rood. So don't go anywhere until you watch this.
Our Father in heaven wants to bless your home, your children, and to give you long life. It's an eternal promise from Deuteronomy chapter 6. All he asks in return is for you to love him with all of your heart. During the month of April, when you give to the ministry of A Rood Awakening International, we'll send you a special gift that helps demonstrate your love for him. For your gift of any amount, we'll send you a mezuzah. The mezuzah has been used for centuries as a means to fulfill the words of Deuteronomy 6 verse 9, to write the commandments on the doorpost of your home. Your mezuzah comes with a scroll inscribed with the Almighty's promises. Fasten it to your doorpost as a reminder of His blessings and to love Him with all of your heart. Call today or visit our website to receive your free mezuzah with your gift of any amount to A Rood Awakening International.
We here at A Rood Awakening International wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our ambassadors who are supporting Bring It to the World.
Gracias.
Toda. Dankeschön.
Your support is changing lives.
Dankjewel.
谢谢.
Thank you.
With your support, we've been able to send our materials to those who need it most, free of charge. Thank you to all of our ambassadors who are supporting Bring It to the World.
The composite of the gospel records tell us that before the Passover lamb was sacrificed the following morning, that Yeshua had his Last Supper with his disciples, in which he took bread, arton, leavened bread, and he took wine, and he said, "This represents my body, which will be broken for you. This cup represents my shed blood, which will pay for the iniquity." It is this very thing that the Melchizedek shared with Abraham. As Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. And when the Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine, he shared with them about the coming of the Messiah, about his broken body, about his shed blood. And Abraham gave a tenth of everything that he owned and laid it at the feet of the Melchizedek. He saw Yeshua's day and he rejoiced. And so now, every time we do this, every Sabbath, every meal in which there's bread and wine, in which we take this and we bless the Most High. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Yeshua said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." As often as you do it in remembrance of me. And then Yeshua took the cup, and he said, "Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth the fruit of the vine," the creator of the fruit of the vine. And every time we do this, we do remember his death and what he did for us until he comes. One day, at the marriage supper of the Lamb, Yeshua will lift his cup and say, "I have not had a drop of this, as I promised at the Last Supper. I've been waiting for you. Now, l'chaim, to life everlasting." Shalom, Torah fans, and welcome to episode number 1 in our lessons on the way to Mount Sinai, baptized or Mikveh'd in the Red Sea. When we finally made it all the way to Mount Sinai, Moses went up to the mountain and the Almighty said, "Go back down and ask the children of Israel and tell them this. If they will keep my commandments, they will be a kingdom of priests. They will be my representatives to the entire world." And so when Moses came down and asked the question, we did not have the option of saying, "Well, could you give us a few samples of what these commandments might be," because we really didn't know what he was going to ask of us. But in reality, for the previous 7 weeks, as we were journeying out of Egypt on our way to Mount Sinai, we were given some fundamental lessons, some basic things that we had to know so that when we came to Mount Sinai, we were ready for the Almighty to then shout down his commandments and then give us the detail concerning the building of the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and all of these things had their precursors as we were coming out of Egypt. And if you will now take your Bibles and turn to Exodus chapter 12, in verse 51, we're going to start, because it says that, and it came to pass this very selfsame day, that Yehovah did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. And so this sets the stage. He's bringing us out of Egypt. The Passover event has happened. And along with the Passover event, we are told that we are going to be keeping this every year forever. But now we go on to chapter 13, verse 1. And Yehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn that opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast. It is mine. It belongs to me. And he was laying this out because the firstborn of the land of Egypt, they all died because of their disobedience. All who put the blood of the lamb on the doorpost and the lintels, even among the Egyptians, they were all saved. The death angel passed over them. And that's why we see such an incredible multitude coming out of the land of Egypt. We went into Egypt, 70 people, and then, of course, Joseph and his family was already there. And now we're about 215 years later, and it's at this time that 600,000 men on foot came out, plus women and children. And so it lets us know that it really was quite a number of Gentiles that were added to Israel at that time. We came out a mixed multitude out of the land of Egypt. We saw in our previous sessions that it was 430 years from when Abraham was told to come out of Babylon, cross over the Euphrates River. It is at that time 430 years of the sojourning until we came out of Egypt. And we were not in bondage for 430 years. And later on, it says that from the time that the covenant, the land covenant, was made with Abraham, in which the Almighty put Abraham to sleep, and the Almighty walked up and down through that blood, making a blood covenant with Abraham that Abraham wasn't even party to. It was not going to be up to his strength. And it's from that time that it is 400 years until we would come out. Now we see that we are coming out literally in the fourth generation from when Levi went in, now the fourth generation, which is Moses' son, their offspring, Moses' son. Now it is the fourth generation, about 215 years, according to Ginsburg and also, I believe, Bishop Usher and also E.W. Bullinger in his chronology work nails it at 215 years. So, give or take a few years, that's about the length of time that we were in here, in Egypt. And Moses said, remember this day in which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand, Yehovah brought you out from this place, there shall be no leavened bread eaten. And again, he's telling us about the future, what is going to happen, that we are going to remember this service. And then it tells us something very important. This day came you out in the month of, not Abib, well, you could pronounce it Abib if you want to be a Gentile, but it is the month of the Aviv. In Hebrew, Ha-Aviv, the month of the Aviv. Now, this is very important because this is when we celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the month of the Aviv, because in the month of the Aviv barley, we came out of Egypt. Aviv is a ancient Hebrew agricultural term that refers only to the maturity of barley when it is time to harvest it. It is before it's fully ripe, because once it's fully ripe, you put a sickle to it, you shatter the head, you've already reseeded for the next year. But Aviv barley is a technical term, and that is the month we came out because it says that in the plague of hail, the hail destroyed the barley because the barley was Aviv. Now, we are not going to keep the month of the Aviv as we did in Egypt. We're going to keep it in the land of Israel when we finally get into the land, but this is where it starts out. Remember, we're going to do this in the month of the Aviv. And it shall be when Yehovah shall bring you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, Jebusites, which he sware unto your fathers to give you, a land that is flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. What month? The month of the Aviv. Now, it does not really matter that the rabbis who had not the authority, and Yeshua said, do not follow the takanot of the Pharisees. They say they follow Moses, they don't do what Moses says to do. He says, follow Moses. And then Yeshua said, do not follow the takanot and ma'asim of the Pharisees. The Pharisees in 359 of the Common Era made takanot. They changed the calendar from the biblical calendar that was reckoned according to the month of the Aviv in the land of Israel. They changed it to a mathematical calendar. And so now we continue on. It tells us in verse 6, 7 days we're going to eat unleavened bread, and the seventh day we'll have a feast. Then unleavened bread shall be eaten. Matzah shall be eaten 7 days. There shall be no leaven seen with thee, neither shall there be any leaven in all of your quarters or all of the borders of your land. And thou shalt show thy son in that day. In that day, what day? When we come into the land flowing with milk and honey. Now, it's going to take us 40 years to get there. But it says, when we come to this day, we say, this is done. We do this because that which Yehovah did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. Now, this is a very important thing. It is not what Yehovah did to Israel. As we're thinking in antiquity, this is what he did to our fathers. No, this is how we personalize it. This is what he did to me when he brought me out of the land of Israel. Now remember, all that generation, they're going to die. They're not going to enter into the promised land. But the offspring, the children that they said were going to be destroyed in the wilderness by the enemy, the Almighty brought them into the land. And so now, even to this day, we personalize it. It is not they, it is not then, it is now, it is a reality. He brought us out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes. Now, how do you put leavened bread as a sign on your hand and as a frontlet, something between your eyes? Well, this is a way of remembering, to wear something on your body to remember something. And so even though we can't hang unleavened bread, and we don't do this every year, and we can't take a feast of 7 days long and then somehow hang it on our hand and on our head, it is a memorial. It is right there in front of us. It is a figure of speech. Now, of course, we have seen Rabbinic Judaism turn this figure of speech into something literally spoken of as tefillin, which they bind on their hand and on their forehead. But it is clearly a figure of speech speaking of the 7-day feast. And then we continue on. We'll read that in verse 11. It shall be when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, again, emphasizing the Canaanites, these perverts, these cursed people that are squatting in this land, just as he said he would do to your fathers, that he would bring you in, you shall set apart unto Yehovah all that opens the matrix. And every firstling that comes of a beast, which you have, The males shall belong to Yehovah. They belong to him. And every firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb. And if you'll not redeem it, then you'll break his neck. Because all the firstborn of man among thy children, you shall redeem. So we have a choice. The firstborn of all the animals in the land of Egypt died. The firstborn of those who were not under the blood died. So as a remembrance of this, every single year, every time one of our animals gives birth to a male, that male belongs to Yehovah. And if you don't want to redeem a donkey, then you break its neck. You take an axe, and that's how it's done. You take an axe and you cut its head off, and that is how you offer that to Yehovah. If you want to keep it, then you offer a lamb in its place. But it's going to cost you something because it belongs to him. Now, of course, our own children, we actually pay for our children. We actually give a gift to Yehovah in return for the firstborn. Now, we're not going to kill our children, but again, it's a constant reminder that verse 14, by strength of hand, Yehovah brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage, and he slew all the firstborn of Egypt, both of man and of beast, and that is why everything that all the males that open the matrix, they belong to me. And verse 16, and this shall be for a token upon your hand, and for frontlets between thine eyes. Now, are you going to hang a donkey there? Are you going to kill and chop off the head of a donkey and hang it on your forehead and on your hand? No. Again, it's a figure of speech. It's not literally wrapping the head of a donkey or a dead lamb on your hand or on your forehead. And now we go on. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines. Not through the way of the land of the Philistines. See, the Philistines we see in Genesis, it says that Mitzrayim, or Egypt, begat Kasulahim, out of whom came the Philistine. Okay, so we have a descendant from Egypt, from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, who are the Philistines. And they control the northern end of the Yam Suf, the Dead Sea, in a line that goes all the way up to Gaza. That is the area of the Philistines. And then from a little bit further north, we have the area of the Canaanites. But he did not take us by the way of the wilderness, did not take us through the way of the land of the Philistines, although it was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and they return to Egypt. So it tells us that they were ready to do war. Israel is coming out, and they are not going to pass through their area. There is going to be a battle with the Philistines if they go around the north end, which is the normal trade route to get back into the land of Midian. Remember, it was in the land of Midian when Moses came across the burning bush. The Almighty said, bring the children of Israel back to this mountain and worship me on this mountain. He was living in the land of Midian. He was living and tending the flocks of Yitro, who is of Midian, which is one of the offsprings of Abraham through Keturah, his Egyptian wife. And so they were going to do battle and said, okay, we're not going to go by the way of the Philistines. Because when they see war, they're going to return to Egypt. Verse 18, but God led them about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. Now, it's literally going to be the Wadi Watir. And we're going to see, well, we'll get into this because it gives us some detail about this. And the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Now, what does it mean by harnessed? In Hebrew, it's hamush. Like Hamesh is 5, but Hamush, which is they were then marched out of Egypt in Hamush, in a column of fives. This is a disciplined military order. It is basically platoon formation with a reinforced special forces, okay? So weapons, okay? You've got your infantry, and then you've got the fifth column of weapons. This is common formation even to this very day in the military. And so basic platoon formation is a column of fours. Moses marched us out in a column of fives. That's what the word harnessed actually means, which is hamush. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. Now we remember back in Genesis 50, verse 24, it says that Joseph was about to die, and he told his brothers that after I die, Elohim will surely visit you, will bring you out of the land of Egypt, as he swore unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Joseph took an oath. He made all of the rest of the children of Israel swear, saying, you're going to carry my bones up from here. He died. He was 110 years old. They embalmed him. They put him in a coffin in Egypt and then put him in the step pyramid, which is in the city of Sakkara, which in Hebrew is Sukkot, and that is exactly where Joseph was buried. And it tells us in Exodus chapter 12, just in the previous chapter, the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses up in the land of Goshen to Sukkot. Why were they going there? To pick up the body of Joseph. And the area outside of the city, this big plain was enough where 600,000 plus women and children assembled there on foot. It tells us in Exodus chapter 1 that the children of Israel were building Pharaoh's treasure cities. Pithom, which is the place or palace of Pharaoh Tom, and Ramses. Ramses means it's Ra Moses, really. It is drawn out of Ra or born of Ra. Okay, the reincarnated. Now we have, Ramses born of Ra. And so these are the cities that they were building. The Tel Amarna tablets, which in Tel Amarna, Egypt, tells a story of a Pharaoh, Pharaoh Tom, who died in a battle with a god. He died in a whirlpool, and his body was not returned. This is how we know, according to accurate Egyptology, who the Pharaoh of the Exodus was, because the Tel Amarna tablets. Now, Egyptology is one of the most ridiculous histories in all of the history of the world. At the time that Ptolemy Philadelphus, who is a couple generations away from Alexander the Great, when he took Egypt and the land of Israel and had them under his control, he asked the people for a history of their people because he was the conqueror. And so Israel took them very seriously. They sent then 72 scholars who were Hebrew and Greek scholars. They understood the Torah and they translated the Torah into Greek. Became known as the Septuagint, the 70. What did Egypt do? One priest called Manetho wrote the entire history of Egypt, and that is what Egyptology is based on. One priest, and he said for 30,000 years, gods ruled Egypt. For 30,000 more years, gods and men ruled Egypt, and then there were 30 dynasties. The two oldest copies of this differ in the names of 1,700 gods and pharaohs who ruled Egypt. I mean, the Egyptians did not even treat it seriously enough to even bother to copy it right, okay? It's a joke. But this is what modern Egyptology is based on, and that's why you can't trust them as far as you can throw them, because Egyptology is based on the lie that Israel was never there. Well, we've got the evidence. They found Pharaoh's chariots on the bottom of the Red Sea. We know what took place. The scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, are an accurate record of the land and the people of which they speak and the acts of the Almighty. Egyptology, whatever they tell you on History Channel and National Geographic and all this, it is pure made up hockey foddy, which is Arabic for nonsense, okay? So now we continue on here. So they took the bones of Moses up just as they were told to do so, and they took, in verse 20, they took their journey from Sukkot. Now we're in Exodus chapter 13, verse 20. They took their journey from Sukkot. This is where we left from. Now this is not the same Sukkot where Jacob, when he came back and met Esau, that he built booths for his cattle and named the place Sukkot, because that Sukkot was a city that belonged to, near a city that belonged to Shem, which is in the land of Canaan, which it tells about in Genesis chapter 33. And so now, we took our journey from Sukkot and encamped in Etham in the edge of the wilderness. It happens to be the far edge of the wilderness, just before going into the land controlled by the Canaanites around the north edge of the sea. And it says that Yehovah went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them in the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. We traveled around the clock. There's no Sabbath rest here, ladies and gentlemen. 7 days around the clock to bring us all the way down to the Red Sea, and you have to travel around the clock to be able to make it. This was an absolutely grueling journey, but it had to be done, and the people are being tested. And now, chapter 14. Yehovah spake unto Moses, speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahirot, which in Egyptian is Pihahiroti, which means between the gorges, the place between the gorges. Now they're at Etham. Instead of going around the north, instead they enter the Wadi Watir, which is a dry riverbed that dumps out finally after going through these mountain passes where you cannot get out of them. It then lands you on the beach at Nuweiba, Egypt. And so we're traveling day and night to get there. Camp before Pihahiroti, or Pihahirot, the place between the gorges, between Migdol and the sea. Migdol, which means tower, and it's actually a Egyptian military encampment, which is just north of Nuweiba, Egypt. And over against Baal Zephon, over against, on the other side of the Yam Suf, is Baal Zephon, which means Lord of the North. And so here they are, nailed it, between the gorges, right there, where the Wadi Watir lets out, right there at what is now called Nuweiba, Egypt. And you shall encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. I will harden Pharaoh's heart. He is going to know that he has you trapped if you follow that military path down the Wadi Watir. He will know that there is no way that you can go to the south because the mountains go to the sea. You can't go to the north because of the hardened military encampment of Migdol. And so I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all of his host, that the Egyptians may know that I am Yehovah. Again, over and over and over, he says the reason why he brings us up out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand is that the whole world will know that his name is Yehovah. I have no respect for those who refuse to even attempt to speak his name, when his name is to be known throughout all the world. For those who do not even want to go out of the way they'll call him Hashem, which means old what's his name. Or any number of things, but they don't want to give him his due that his name will be known. This is why he drowned the Egyptians in the bottom of the Red Sea, so that all of the Egyptians will know that he is Yahovah. This answers Pharaoh's question. This is what's going to happen. Pharaoh said, I do not know Yahovah, the God of Israel, neither will I let the people go. Well, he's going to have a face-to-face encounter, Pharaoh Tom, with the God of the heavens and the earth, Yahovah, and he is not going to fare too well in the outcome. And so now, it was told the king of Egypt, verse 5, that the people had fled. See, he'd given us permission to go 3 days' journey into the desert, but we kept on going. And so now, after we kept going, now his people along the way, the sentries, the military posts along the way, turn around and go back and tell Pharaoh, no, Israel, they just didn't go for 3 days and do sacrifice. They have continued going on. And the heart of Pharaoh turned against the people, and he said, why have we done this? Why have we let Israel go from serving us? It was like he came to his senses. Who's going to build the treasure cities? This is ridiculous. We should have killed them all or something, but we're not just going to let them walk out of here. He made ready his chariot and took his people with him. He took 600 chosen, choice, prime war chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over every one of them. And Yahovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and they went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses, the chariots, and his army, and they overtook them encamping by the sea, which is near Pihahirot, before, over against Baal-Zephon, the Lord of the North. There's the city over on the shore of the Canaanites. The Midianites. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and they saw the Egyptians marching. They were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried unto Yahovah. And they said, what, because there were no graves in Egypt, you've taken us out here to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us this way? Why have you brought us out of Egypt? Is this not exactly what we told you when we were in Egypt? Say, leave us alone. Just leave us alone so that we can serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians the rest of our lives than we should die out here in the wilderness. Moses said, fear not. Stand still and see the salvation of Yahovah. The Egyptians who you see today, you shall not see them again.